Hello. I wondered if the fact that the station looked a lot like the spaceship in Alien um, from Ridley Scott was something you wanted, and if it's intended, was it something you discussed with the director, or is it just because you liked the film and it kind of came in naturally?
I'll let Gavin Rother answer that.
Yeah, Duncan, why did that station look so much like the one out of Alien?
I don't know, mate, you designed it.
Well, it was all to do with us wanting to emulate the golden era of science fiction in the 70s when all these films were new. And we wanted to go for a film that looked like it was lost from back then, right? That was kind of the whole intention of the aesthetic and this whole character piece, really. That's what we were trying to do, is make a film that looked like it had been lost and then found.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes. Yeah.
It must have been an interesting experience making a film where all of the main character interactions are either a man with a computer, which presumably take recorder Kevin Spacey, or a man with himself. Which I just wondered if you could talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously very difficult for Sam Rockwell, who was the amazing performance, I think. And what made it particularly amazing is the fact that Sam's trained in something called the Meisner technique, which is a form of acting where it's very much improvisational and reactionary. It's based on reacting to what another actor throws at you. And obviously in this case, there wasn't anything. So it really was the antithesis of the way that he was used to working, and really threw him into a situation that was very unusual for him. Stuart was really good in making sure that we had a week of rehearsal time before we actually did the shoot. And for an independent film, that's fairly unusual. So Sam and myself and another actor, a guy called Yul Vasquez, who was a friend of Sam's, we had a week to be able to work through the script and go through all of the individual scenes and really break it down, and for Sam to really feel comfortable that he understood what the roles were for the two different characters of Sam, and sort of really get his opportunity to be as creative as he wanted with it as an actor before we went to the actual shoot and did what was a very technical exercise. But when it came to the shoot, we actually found there was a little bit of flexibility there as to what we were going to be able to do. And what we found is with the effect, as Sam would be able to be as improvisational as he wanted to when he did the first half of any given conversation. And then when it came to doing the second half of it, as long as he got the timings right, because basically he would be basing his timings on the first side of the conversation, it almost became like jazz. He could kind of improvise his way through any given take. And as long as he hit the timings and sort of stopped talking when the other Sam was talking, he could sort of do whatever he wanted. So we'd give him an eye line and say, you need to look there, because that's where you were in the last shot. And then there would be these gaps. And because he's got a very good sense of rhythm, as I'm sure you can tell by his amazing dancing, because he has a good sense of rhythm, he was able to sort of do whatever he wanted to do. And I think having that little bit of sort of, he's got this word that he uses, loosey-goosey. Sam basically said, I want to be able to be a bit loosey-goosey with this, which basically means he wants to be able to improvise and just try things out. And because we had sort of worked out this technique, he was able to be a little bit more flexible and be improvisational, even though he was just performing essentially with himself.
And it wasn't actually as easy for those guys to do that as Duncan just made that sound.
Yeah. I'm doing enough Q&As though, so I've convinced myself it was easy. Yes?
I was just going to say, and you don't have to give this away or not, but in a lot of movies where you do have one actor playing two characters, it's very obvious when you're in the shot, when you have one character on one side and one on the other, and then they don't break that line. And I at least just want to say, you guys did a really great job of somehow being able to blend those, and eventually I just let go of that because the actors, it did seem like you somehow just had to stand in wearing his mask, and they were able to interact without that awareness.
Well, one of the reasons we chose that particular effect to be sort of the main meat of the film was that we could actually use much cheaper effects as for most of the effect, if that makes any sense. We had a good body double, so I was able to shoot over his shoulder for a lot of the time. And then, when we wanted to spend some money and do the effect and make it a little bit more impressive, we would do something called a static split screen, where you just have the camera locked off, and like you say, you just sort of split it in the middle. And then we had a period of time in the middle of our shoot where we had a motion control rig, something called a sprog, which was like a small, lightweight motion control rig. and at that time we would be able to move the camera. It's basically they have all these different levels of the effect, and you save up your money for the ones where you really want to push the technology. And there was one actually that Gav came up with, which I'll let him explain, where we actually have physical interaction between the characters.
Is that the one where he puts out on him?
Yeah.
When he's doing his flies? Yeah, that sounds ideal actually. There's a bit at the end where he's kind of crouching down on the floor and he's talking to him. And yeah, it's, I don't know, it was weird, wasn't it? We spent the whole morning trying to do that and we completely arsed it up. And we wasted the entire morning and we didn't have any time to waste. And we went back 2 days later and Sam totally nailed it. And all he's doing is he's standing like this with the cameras where you are, and he's got a tennis ball on a seat stand touching his shoulder. And all he's got to do is keep his body at an oblique angle to the camera, and we just used a double with the same suit on, and it totally worked. And it's really dirty, and I shouldn't be explaining this stuff. But a lot of what you saw in here was just little, dirty, little cheap tricks like that, and you can see they totally work.
Very, very clever.
You are a dirty little trickster though, aren't you?
Well, dirty little tricks are usually the ones that get the biggest smiles.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I have 2 questions. Was the Chesney Hawkes song in the script?
I'm going to let Stuart answer this one.
Okay, as you know, I think people have talked about the budget a little bit, but so every penny counted on this. And Duncan was like, oh, wouldn't it be brilliant if we had Chesney Hawkes? So I'm the one and only. And I'm like, well, I don't know, let's see how much it will cost. So then I found out how much it would cost, and I was like, no, I don't think it would be that brilliant. so Duncan and I had this little thing where we'd see if people laughed, and if people laughed, I said he could have it, and people continued to find it funny. So,
I was paying them.
but yeah, it was obviously very, very money.
It broke Stuart's heart. It broke his heart that I managed to get that song in there.
I now concede it was obviously a work of genius, but it's funnier the second time for me. When you hear it on the alarm clock the second time, it is funny, so it was a good choice.
Second thing I was wondering, how long did the film take from like the inception of the idea until tonight?
Yeah, scarily quick actually, and I don't think it's a very standard benchmark, but I think we were a year from commissioning the script from Duncan's story and treatment to picture lock. So that was, development, shoot, edit in a year. Which is crazily fast. We never ever want to do that again. Anybody else?
Yes, this gentleman keeps on putting his hand up, sorry.
I was just going to ask, British films very rarely have this sci-fi thing, sort of and maybe why you were doing that was instead of social realism.
I think that's one of the reasons, is that everyone does it. So, we from the background that we've actually all of us worked together before as a team doing commercials. And we've done some quite, special effects heavy work. So it kind of felt like, if we're going to do a feature film, let's do what we know we're good at, and what other people can't do. So let's do something with special effects. And science fiction is something I think we're all interested in, and particularly Sam Rockwell and myself, and Gavin, who is sort of very, involved in realising what the look of the film was going to be with me. We just wanted to do the kind of film that we wanted to see, and in all honesty, as much as I appreciate and respect those kind of more socially realistic films, it's not the kind of film I would probably go out and spend good money to go and see. Whereas I think I would go and see this if someone else made this. I'd be interested in seeing a smart sci-fi film. I'd like to see that, especially when it's up against films like Transformers and Terminator Salvation and all that other rubbish.
Yeah, don't see those, Steve.
I mean, I like those too, but I'd like to have the option to see maybe a smarter science fiction film as well.
It's not so much that it's hard to get financed. It feels like it's practically impossible to do a science fiction film on an independent budget.
Yeah.
So I think you're right, but it's the other way around.
To be honest, one of the hardest things we had, jobs we had, was actually convincing people that we knew what we were doing, that we could do it for that much money. Because you tell someone you're going to spend like just over £2.5 million making a science fiction film, and it's going to look like Gav did all these beautiful pieces of concept artwork and animatics, and we're presenting them at these meetings in front of financiers, and they're going, and you want how much money to do this?
Yeah.
It's like we're trying to do a pyramid scheme or something.
I almost wonder if we should have asked for more. But, everyone loved the script, everyone loved the visuals, and Duncan's vision for the film, and it was like, you guys, you're never going to do it in this time frame and with that much money.
In fact.